Tonight's story begins with three friends hiking deep into the Appalachians, a trip meant for laughter, campfires, and an experimental drug called stoppers. But when the forest itself straightens into rows, when voices start calling your name in the dark, and when time refuses to move, the nightmare truly begins. And in the end, one man wakes up safe at home, only to find his boots still covered in Appalachian mud. This is not a dream. This is the forest wearing your skin. Welcome to Nightmare Proof, where true horror comes alive. Here, you'll hear real stories of the strange, the disturbing, and the unexplainable. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to face the darkness. My boots are covered in mud. I don't know if I've gone insane. I keep telling myself I'm writing this for anyone who likes to wander into the cosmos of their own mind, like a warning, like a flare. Still, it could be me trying to pin the world to the page so it stops slipping. Backpacking has always been my anchor. When I was a kid and everything got too loud, I'd take off into the woods behind our place in Georgia, walk until the cicadas turned into a single long sound and the air went cool under the trees. I liked how the forest swallowed noise. I liked how light got filtered through pine needles and spider silk. The Appalachians feel different than other places. It's not quiet like a library. It's peaceful, like the mountain is pushing its thumb on the pulse of the land and slowing down life. Moving to Florida for work felt like getting relocated to a frying pan. Flat, hot, sticky. The air down here doesn't move. It sits and sweats. I can't see a horizon without a billboard stuck in it. But the mountains are only 8 hours away if you leave in the dark and drive like your brain depends on it. So I do. I still do. Those trips back up to Georgia feel like going home to a version of myself I don't have to explain. We planned this 2-day trip for the past month. Jake, Brandon, and I. I should say it now. My name is Hunter. Jake's been my friend since we were dumb kids getting scraped up on BMX bikes. 10 years of knowing exactly how he'll react before he does. He's serious. Responsible, but in that quiet way that makes you forget he's always taking care of something. Brandon is a later addition. Jake's buddy from college. Like a stray that started following us around and then refused to leave. Brandon's the guy who always has a story, and it's always half true, and the other half is the part that should have killed him. He recently dived into a hot tub at a party. He fractured 2 vertebrae, then stood up with his neck crooked, asking if anyone thought he needed a hospital. Somehow, he didn't die from the break, and even more impressively, he is ready to join us on a hike again. Only a year later, he brags about stealing Aldi steaks like it makes him an outlaw. He's dumb lucky, and I never really liked him, but Jake did, so I put up with him constantly doing stupid shit. Last trip out, Brandon tossed a lighter into the fire. As a joke! And it popped and burned neat constellations into my tent fly. I patched them with clear tape like band-aids on a sky. For this trip, I went overboard with a new bag, a new headlamp, a new tent, and the best food possible. 2 frozen steaks for the first night, wrapped in newspaper. A couple of astronaut ice creams that taste like powdered vanilla, but the nostalgia makes it worth it. I found a trail on Reddit that looked like a good one, with less traffic, better views, and steeper climbs than most routes. The thread had a poorly scanned topo map and a comment saying, "Worth it," which, in backpacker language, can cover anything from scenic to near death. I left on Friday before sunrise. Florida leaked away behind me in long, wet rectangles of light. By Valdosta, the air shifted. By Macon, the sky felt taller. Somewhere after Dahlonega, the hills heaved up into more than a slight hill that Florida calls a mountain, and my shoulders came down out of my ears. I called Jake outside Commerce, and he answered like I dragged him out of a pit. "It's Friday?" He croaked. "Shit. Meet me at my house." Jake wasn't packed. Of course he wasn't. He had ramen and trail mix and nothing like a tent. I tossed him my spare, because it's easier than scolding him. We hit the grocery for fuel, and then Jake called Bill, our usual guy. Mushrooms were the plan. Instead, Bill said, "I've got something new." He held up a zip bag to the light, little translucent black gummies with gold flecks suspended inside. like someone had ground up a wedding ring and poured the glitter into jello. He called them stoppers, said they froze time, but not in a DMT leave your body way. You're still in the world, Bill said. Just, the world gets slow, sticky, like the second refuses to change. $20 a pop, twice the usual. Jake didn't blink. My stomach did. Psychedelics in the backcountry are a dice roll on a good day. Time dilation sounded like a dice roll with knives glued on. But I couldn't stop staring at those gummies. The gold didn't look like edible glitter. It looked like metal filings caught in a jellyfish. I said yes before I finished the thought. We swung by Brandon's. Like always, chaos. His parents were in the house yelling, their voices hitting that too familiar pitch old arguments have, the one that sounds like a fly trapped between window and screen. Brandon was on the porch, drinking from a tall can, laughing at nothing. He had his pack, though. Credit where it's due. When we told him about the stoppers, he grinned like a kid and asked if he could take 2. No, I said, and slapped his hand when he pantomimed snatching the bag. 1 each. We've only got enough for 1, a night apiece. He smiled like he agreed, and his eyes said, I'll do what I want. Up 19 to side roads, the Corolla is complaining like Grandpa about every pothole. We stopped at a crusty gas station because the tank light popped on. 4 pumps, 2 dead, a buzzing fluorescent light, and a top sign with the P in Pineview burnt out. So it read, in a view. 2 guys out front by the ice machine, in those puffy jackets that always look damp and never look warm. One watched us while we pumped. He had that too thin face and jittery jaw. He eased over when he saw the packs and asked, You boys going up Asher Mountain? We nodded. He shook his head like we'd told him we were swimming across an interstate. Don't camp up there. Not at night. Nothing good in those woods. Brandon snapped without missing a beat. We don't have shit for you. Get the fuck out of here. The guy's mouth twitched. He spat near our boots and shuffled off, muttering. I told myself it was just the usual mountain lore. Appalachia collects stories, like burrs collect pant legs. Every ridge has a thing. Every hollow has a dead man's name. I've hiked enough. I've never seen anything but bear, scat, and people's trash. The road into the trailhead turned to red clay and ruts. Rain earlier had slicked it to a pace that grabbed the tires and tried to kiss us into the ditch. Trees pressed close, pines and crooked oak, trunks dark with wet, beads of water trembling on leaves like held breath. The Corolla did that sideways slide a couple of times, where your heart falls through your feet, and then the tires grip and catch, and you pretend you didn't almost die. Trailhead, a tilted wooden post, a bullet-pocked sign, a pull-off with enough room for 3 cars if everyone likes each other, gray light under the canopy. The kind of light where a camera would turn the world to fuzz. We lit a joint and passed it, the smoke cut with that wet leaf smell that always smells like rotten home at the same time. Packs up. Hip belts buckled. Click, click. That little happy clatter of metal on metal, that means you're about to disappear for a while. I hadn't hiked this path before. The Reddit map said, easy first half, but either they were lying or the forest decided to express itself. It was narrow, overgrown, a buckthorn slapping trail. Little wet branches whipped our arms and laid cold lines of water across our sleeves. The ground was all roots and hidden holes. The climb hit quick, a steep switchback that woke the lungs like a slap. We fell into the usual pace while going up the steep inclines of the Appalachians. Pass the joint. Cough, laugh, and pass the joint. No one is willing to stop smoking and admit that their lungs are on fire from the climb. I can't complain, though. There isn't anything better than the smell of smoke and pine sap. It was getting slippery, though, and the dirt tasted like iron when it sprayed up in your mouth after a slip. Brandon dropped half the weed in a puddle and swore like we'd pushed him. That was the good stuff, dude. You didn't buy it, I said, but I was smiling because I was still soft enough to smile. The fog rolled through in bands like ghost rivers. Sometimes it came up from the valley and slid through the trunks at knee height. Sometimes it hung in ragged sheets between trees, and you had to walk into it like a curtain into another room. When the wind pushed it, it went sideways, and the whole forest blurred like it needed to be wiped with a thumb. By late afternoon, we climbed onto a ridge with a low rock outcrop. The view unfurled. Green layers of mountains, ridges stacked like old blankets, each one taller than the one in front of it. A vulture circled a lazy loop that made me jealous. I set up the little stove on the flat rock and thawed the steaks. The paper peeled off damp and left newsprint on the meat, which cooked away, and we pretended it made us smarter. Grease dripped, hissed, smelled like 5 stars. We ate steak and ramen and laughed at how good everything tastes when the air's cold and you worked for it. Then the sky started bleeding purple, and the trees went black before the ground did. That's when I pulled the zip bag out. The stoppers shimmered in the firelight. The gold flecks woke up when the flames moved, pulsing like they were reacting. 1 each, I said. I meant it like a command. Brandon gave me his wide smile like, "Yes, sir," and still tried to sneak an extra one before my hand hit his head. "Ouch, what the fuck, dude? I was joking," he shouted at me. I said 1 each, stop being an asshat. He dropped it after that and took his one. The gummy hit my tongue and my stomach dropped. Gasoline and pennies. There was a chemical top note like paint thinner and a rotten sweet underneath like cough syrup you left in a hot car. It stuck to my teeth and I had to scrape it off with my tongue. Brandon made a face. Jake rolled his eyes and said, "That can't be good," but chewed and swallowed and then raised his eyebrows like, "Well, we're committed." At first, it was just the campfire. Pop, hiss, spark, the usual comfort. Jake told a story about a guy at work who printed 30 copies of his resignation letter and then forgot to resign. Brandon bragged about a girl who didn't exist. I let the noise move around me and watched the smoke. It went up. It did what smoke does. Then it didn't. The smoke folded. It bent like a ribbon being tucked into a pocket. It rolled back down into the flame like the fire had become a drain. The sparks didn't float up and outward. They shot sideways, a little golden school of fish that darted and grouped and then stayed in a knot like they were stuck in glue. I felt the first hair raise on my arms. I blinked, and the fire was like TV static, the gray fuzz of a screen an old set makes when you kill the channel, and it hums that low electric hum you can feel in your fillings. The static ate the shape of the logs and gave back a rectangle of gray noise that looked like heat shimmering on the road, but colder. Jake had a line of drool shining on his chin and didn't know it. Brandon's mouth fell open and stayed. His eyes were wet, reflecting the static like tiny screens. "Does the fire look like that to you?" I asked, and my voice sounded like I was under a blanket. Brandon said, "The fire's fine, man. It's the trees." We looked. I swear to you, the forest had straightened. The randomness you expect from the different gaps, the weird spacing, and the drunk angles were gone. The trees stood in columns and rows, lined up like pews in a cathedral, trunks in perfect alignment front to back. The gaps between them were identical, cut to measure. In the distance, rocks aligned too, each the same size, spaced like someone used a football field as a ruler and stamped them across the ridge. Rock, air, rock, air. My eyes tried to slide off it and instead stuck to the pattern like burrs to socks. Then I heard water. It started like a faucet being turned on in another room, a trickle that tickled the ear. It became a stream, then a rush, then full-on waterfall noise planted just out of sight, the kind of sound you feel in your chest and your teeth. It was so obvious, so loud that I said, "We need water anyway." Like that was a reason to stand up. We stood up. We left the fire. The rows of trees made walking in a straight line feel like walking down an aisle at the world's worst grocery store. Every time I thought we'd hit a bend in the trail, the bend slid 1 aisle over, same distance away. When I looked back behind us, the camp was gone. I saw aisle after aisle of trunks, each gap the same. Our firelight was already a lie, my brain had told me. The other didn't seem to care, so I just kept walking with them. We walked toward the roar until it filled the world, and then as if somebody flipped a switch. Silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring their own private sound because the brain refuses to accept anything. No crickets, no owls, not even wind. Just our boots pressing wet leaves and coming up with that sticky kiss sound. That's when I realized it was still dusk. It had been dusk when we lit the fire. It was dusk when we stood up. It was dusk right now, even though it felt like half an hour had slid by while the waterfall sound grew and died. The sky had stalled at that bruised color, with no stars yet and no sun either, like a clock with its second hand glued down. I cursed for not bringing my headlamp. It was in my pack. I could have grabbed it. I didn't. That stupid little decision started to feel like the hinge the night swung on. Brandon licked his lips. They looked pale in the half-light, like someone had pulled the red out of him. "Do you guys still hear the water?" "No," I said, and my voice came out thin. "It's gone." We turned around to walk back, and the forest still hadn't changed. The rose stayed. The rocks stayed. The smell of our fire, meat, and smoke was gone. Our prints didn't show up. It was like we'd been walking on a new floor that rolled over the old one as we moved, covering tracks. "Well, fuck, now we have to find our way back," I said as we started to move back. That's when I began to feel like something else was walking with us. At first, it was footsteps that didn't match ours, softer. The sound of small stones clicking against each other just to the side, like something with narrow feet was testing the ground. Then 2 of those, then 3. Every time we stopped, the extras stopped. Every time we moved, they resumed. Not in sync, not echoes, followers. I didn't say it. Jake didn't say it. We tightened up without saying it, shoulders in, breaths shallow. Brandon kept glancing to the sides with his eyes only, his head locked forward like prey animals keep it when they listen for predators. Then the forest started to talk. An owl called, not far. Not a deep night voice, a high one. Except it didn't hoot, it said my name. It pulled it apart into syllables like someone reading who and tear off a sheet of paper for the first time. The last R ticked in my ear in a long, dragged-out horror. We froze. Jake's eyes cut to me. Brandon laughed without breath. "You guys heard that, right? Tell me I'm not crazy." "It's just the drug," Jake said, but his jaw was locked. A coyote yipped. Except it wasn't. It was Brandon's laugh. The exact laugh he'd made 2 hours ago when he told us the steak story. But it wasn't beside me. It was behind, somewhere down an aisle of trees. It sounded doubled, like it bounced around a long tube and came back as an echo, only the tube wasn't there. The hair on my neck turned to needles. Brandon's smile fell off. That was me," he said. Not a question. We walked. What else do you do? The silence between the noises was worse. My brain put a faint TV hum in there to cover it because it needed something, and then the woods did my mother's voice. Clear as day. The exact tone she used when I was 12 and out after dark. "Hunter, time to come inside." From about 2 aisles over, I froze in place, but the others didn't seem to hear it. They stopped, and Jake asked, "What's wrong?" I quickly snapped out of it and continued. "Oh, nothing, let's keep walking." I didn't want to repeat what I heard, which felt like something I didn't want outside my mind. We passed the same stump 3 times. I know it was the same, because a thick branch came out at the same angle and broke off at the same place. And the moss on the north side did a weird hook shape that looked like a question mark. 3 times. 10 minutes apart. We passed a fallen log with a split that looked like a grin. Twice. The trail didn't turn back on itself. I swear to you it didn't. It reused itself. I pulled my compass. The needle went slowly. It started to point and then kept going, like syrup sliding around a plate. It did a full circle, tired, then another. We didn't have north anymore. I checked my phone. 40% battery, then 62, then 19. The clock read 7:12, then 7:13, then 7:12 again. I wanted to throw the thing into the trees because it was pretending to be a clock and wasn't. We stopped to drink water we didn't need. I looked at Jake, and something in my brain stepped back 1 inch. His eyes looked wrong. Pupils wide, sure, but there was a ring around the iris that looked like the ring on a coffee mug. His mouth hung a little more open than a resting mouth should. His shadow behind him stretched longer than mine by a lot, even though we were next to each other. I blinked, and he was him again, but the afterimage sat there like the halo you see after staring at the sundae. Brandon stared at him, and his hand flexed like it forgot if it was supposed to be a fist. "Why's your face doing that?" he asked. Jake sighed. "What are you talking about?" "Your eyes," Brandon said. "They're not yours." We laughed. We always laugh, because what else do you do when tripping balls? The granola bar thing happened next. I pulled one from my hip pocket, unwrapped it, ate half, and shoved the other half back in. I remember the taste of peanut and stale honey and the way it scratches your throat. 20 minutes later, I reached for it again to finish it, and the bar was sealed. New wrapper, no tear, no crumbs in the pocket. I held it up and played with the seam, like maybe I had messed up, and then my stomach turned, and I shoved it back like I hadn't seen it. Brandon's eyes wouldn't leave me. He kept stepping so he could see my face from a new angle without being obvious. He did the same to Jake. He spun, walking backwards for a while, never turning his back to both of us at the same time. The footsteps that weren't ours adjusted with us, trying to keep up, and that was the first time I really wanted to yell. That need hit my throat and died there. "You're not Hunter," Brandon said. Quiet, like to himself. I managed a laugh. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Your voice," he said. "It's not yours. It's wrong." He looked at Jake. "And your eyes keep freaking out. You think I'm stupid? You're not." He swallowed like his mouth had dried out. "You're not you." "Brandon, breathe," Jake said. Calm voice, the one he uses when I start spiraling. "It's the drug." "The drug's not making the forest straight," Brandon said, and he gestured out at all the aisles. "The drug's not making the rocks line up like someone measured space with a ruler, and He choked on the next word. "I heard you behind me, Hunter. I heard you. Laughing. We're all hearing weird things, Brandon. It's just the drug," I said in a reassuring voice. Brandon seemed to calm down slightly, and we stumbled upon what looked like the clearing we had set up camp at. A wider patch in the aisles where the rows opened a fraction. A dead stump in the center, like a table. Our fire wasn't there. Nothing from us was there. But the ground looks the same everywhere, when it's covered in oak leaves stamped flat and damp, and we wanted out of the aisles. So we stopped. Jake crouched, the old man crouch he does when he's thinking. Brandon kept to the edge with his back to the trees and pulled his pocket knife out, flipping it over and over in his hand. I could smell iron, which might have been from my cut across the knuckle from a branch, or it might have been in the air. The sky refused to change. Dusk held. "What time is it?" I said, and it wasn't really a question. 7:12, Jake said. "It was 7:12 before," Brandon said. "It was 7:12 an hour ago." "We haven't been here an hour," I said. My mouth lied. My body said we'd been walking a lifetime. The clearing had sounds again. Not real ones. It was like someone put in a soundtrack and played it too quietly. Little clicks that wanted to be twigs snapping but didn't commit. A hiss that wanted to be wind but didn't know how to move leaves. Mimic sounds. You could tell by the way the hair on the back of your neck didn't know if it should stand up or lie down. "Sit," Jake said. "We're gonna ground and ride it out." Brandon laughed. Low at first, and then high like a kettle. "Ground? With you? With it?" He pointed the knife. The point wobbled because his hand was shaking. "You think I don't see it?" "See what?" I said, and the static hum climbed my jaw into the hinge of my ear. "You," he said, and his voice split into two versions that almost matched. "You're wearing him, like a suit, like a deer skull on a man. You think I'm..." He breathed hard. "You don't even move right." I didn't realize I had my hands out until I saw them. Palms open, fingers soft. The universal "we're okay" gesture you give to a skittish dog. "Brandon," I said. "It's me. It's Hunter. We ate steak and ramen." You spilled the weed and cried about it. His eyes flicked fast like a hummingbird. That's easy to say. Jake stood slowly. Brandon, put the knife down. You say my name like that again, and I'll cut it out of your mouth, Brandon said. He stepped right, just a hair, so we were no longer in line. He wanted us separated. He wanted our faces in frame one at a time so he could be sure. You think I don't hear you two whispering when I look away? You think I didn't see your shadow stretch wrong? Your teeth look longer when you talk. Okay, Jake said. We're going to breathe. In for Brandon moved. It wasn't clean. It wasn't a movie scene where the bad guy attacks you. He lunged like he forgot how to run and remembered at the last second. The knife came at Jake, low, clumsy, fast. Jake got an arm up and caught the blade across his forearm, a flash of red, a mouth opening in skin. I yelled and grabbed Brandon's wrist and felt the tendons under my palm jumping. He was strong. He twisted like his bones were greased. The knife skated. Jake shoved him, shoulder to chest, and Brandon laughed. That doubled laugh. Two voices almost on top of each other, so it sounded like a chorus with one guy out of time. We hit the ground in a knot. Leaves in, and my mouth. Dirt in my mouth. That iron taste again. The knife came down toward my face, and I shoved the flat of it with my thumb, and it sliced the pad, and I saw white under the red for a second, and then my hand was hit out of view from Jake tackling Brandon. They rolled. They hit the stump. Brandon swung the knife and caught Jake shallow across the ribs, and the sound Jake made was like a dog being kicked, and my chest locked, and something inside me said rock. There was a rock at my knee, flat, hand-sized, and wet. I picked it up. It felt heavy in a way rocks are heavy, but also in a way rocks aren't. I didn't think. I didn't reason. I ran to where Brandon and Jake were still on the ground and swung. It caught Brandon across the side of his head, and he went off, his eyes trying to focus on me and not getting there. The knife wobbled. Jake kicked it, and it skipped into the leaves, and I saw the gleam once, and then not again. Brandon tried to stand and couldn't. He laughed again. Except this time it wasn't two voices. It was three. His mouth didn't match any of them. Stop, I said. Stop, 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 stop. He came again, one arm hanging, one arm clawed, and there was no more talking. Jake hit him shoulder first, and they went down together. I brought the rock down again and again, because my brain had become a single command that said, make him stop, and didn't have room for anything else. There are noises you make when you lift weights. Those came out of me. Then there are noises something makes when it breaks. I won't write those. We stopped when we were both too tired to lift our arms, and the hum in the air faded, and my hands shook like I was going into hypothermia. Brandon lay back, looking at the canopy. His eyes didn't blink. His chest didn't move. The rows of trees behind him lined up like a barcode that went on forever. Jake's breath came in tears, little shreds. He pressed his hand to his arm, and it came away slick, and he looked at me like he was 6 and I could fix it. We have to, I said, and didn't have anything after that. We turned away for a second. Maybe we both did. Maybe only I did. We turned away because the blood looked like a map I didn't want to read. When we turned back, Brandon's body was gone. We didn't decide to run, we just ran. The aisles blurred. The straight rows made a flicker book of trunks on either side. Every 4 steps I looked back and saw nothing and saw everything, depending on how my lungs moved. The footsteps multiplied. The voices got smart. They learned our tones and gave them back wrong. Hunter, said Jake's twisted voice, from the trees to my right. Casual, like a friend at a party who wants to tell you a joke. Jake said something that sounded like me from the left, soft, almost a question. The owl repeated my name and added, please. I tripped and ate dirt, and a piece of a stick went into my palm and came out slick, and my hand didn't feel like a hand. Jake hauled me up by the back of my shirt, and we kept going. The rows repeated. We passed the stump with the question mark moss. We passed the log with the grin split. We passed the rock I'd used, or one that looked exactly like it, lying clean in the leaves. I don't know how long we ran. I looked at my phone and saw 7:13. Then I saw 7:12. This shit is never going to end, I thought to myself, and kept running. At some point, I fell and didn't get up. The world narrowed to the size of 2 leaves and the thread between them. The hum in my teeth got louder until it was the only thing. Everything got dark like the dimmer turned down, not like a switch. The last thing I remember is my own voice calling from the trees. Not Jake, not Brandon, me. The exact way I sound when I'm tired and trying to sound like I'm not. "Hunter, this way, hurry!" And I went. I didn't choose it. My body chose it. I tried to fight, and the world slid, and then it was gone. I woke up in my bed. I tried to yell, but I had no air. All I could hear is my phone alarm, doing the little chime I hate. Blind light striped across the wall. Florida light, flat and colorless. I stared at the ceiling, and it was my ceiling. I lay there and waited for Jake to lean over me and grab me, but nothing happened. I let my breath escape me in a laugh, letting my body push the panic out of me. It was all just some sort of twisted dream my brain made up. I turned over and turned off my alarm. The phone said Friday, the day we were supposed to leave. It took me a minute to stand. My knees were stiff in that post-hike way like I'd been walking all weekend. My hip flexors did that little click thing. I told myself it was because I slept wrong. My palms ached. My left one burned when I curled it. There was a little tacky spot, like a scab line. I told myself I scratched it on something here. At home, in the most normal place in the world. The calendar on the wall in my room said we were leaving today. The printout with the route and mile markers hung by a magnet on the fridge next to a shopping list that said eggs, toilet paper, and steak. I went to the bathroom sink and turned on the tap. The water that came out sounded like a waterfall, a football field away. It filled the sink, and as I watched, it looked like TV static for half a second, and then water again. Normal, clean water. I looked at myself in the mirror. My pupils were a little wide, as if a room had dimmed. My mouth hung open just a little because I forgot to finish closing it. I stared at my eyes and waited for a ring to move across them like coffee in a mug, and it didn't. I laughed again, softly, and this time it sounded like someone else, and then it sounded like me again. I could go outside. I could get in the Corolla and drive north. I could knock on Jake's door, and he would open it and be Jake, and I would be Hunter. We would laugh, and he would ask if I was ready to go. I would say sure, and then my brain would fall through a trap door. We would be standing on a ridge, eating steak, and watching a fire's smoke go up like it should instead of down. But when I went to the door to check the weather, I noticed my boots. They were my hiking boots in their usual spot, that I always leave them, but they were wrong. When I knelt down to look at them, I noticed there were tracks from the door that I hadn't cleaned up. Mud tracks, and there was mud on my boots. It was red Appalachian clay. Thank you for watching Nightmare Proof. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the nightmares alive. Have a story of your own? Send it in, and you may hear it here next time. Until then, sleep well if you can.